Hey everybody, this is Perch. A number of you sent me this article. It's from Brian Hibbs or Beat Staff, I guess. And it is tilting at windmills on the beat. It's got 4 comments on it. Was posted, at the recording of this video about a day ago. And we're one success away from saving comics. Um, Before we get all into it, I do believe that we are one big success will lead to a lot of successes. And so I think the premise here of we're one success away or one good thing happening would start a chain reaction is largely true. And this isn't a bold prediction. I think that any business that is at a kind of inflection point of where it's going, it's often one success or one failure that sets up the dominoes of either glory or destruction. And so it's not 50 good decisions. It typically is a good one that anchors a number of other good decisions off of. I struggle with the from saving comics. I'm tired of saving comics, and what I mean by that is certainly not we should save them. Of course we should, but I think part of what's got comics wrong at the moment is that people over dramatize all of it. We've got to save comics. We've got to rescue comics. Comics is doomed, and we must save it. That works good in a comic book, but in terms of running a business, like you don't go into you're not at IBM and you're trying to figure out, how do we find our way where, our software and our cloud is all behind a lot of newer incumbents and we're seen as old and stodgy. Imagine if the CEO was walking around like, we've got to save IBM, we've got to save telecommuting. That person would be a nut. You would not have that CEO in charge of your company. But anyway, let's get into this article because this article is painfully dumb. But let's go there. So, all right. So what do we got? Oh, Battle Quest Comics. Okay, that's the way we're going to save it. Put ads on the beat. Sure, why not? All right. So he goes into his Dr. Manhattan meme. It was one that was on the screen, and the people like to post this, and the reason they post this is to kind of say, hey, for those of you who are saying that comic books are struggling, they've been struggling for a while. Well, that's true. They have been struggling for a while. The details on this are definitely, made for the meme, but technically it was the late 70s where comic books were really in trouble. But anyway, I can kind of poke at it. So this idea of, hey, this all happened before. It's important, and I've done the videos saying, yes, comics have been in trouble before, and they have. It's very cyclical in nature. I don't know that necessarily should give people a lot of comfort. So just because something has been bad at different times and recovered from it, one, it's no guarantee it will recover again. And two, I don't know. It's a certain amount of just trust the institution, which is a massive problem. That actually becomes the premise here in a minute. So anyway, he goes into it. There's a kernel of truth in there. And he got to the 70s, the underground was swept away by the unreliability. Okay, sure. While the newsstands began a free fall for mainstream comics due to the erasure of mom and pop pharmacies. That's not an accurate view of history, but anyway, it's fine. In the 90s, greed was good until it wasn't. Okay. I would point out at this point, Brian Hibbs, he has his shop in San Francisco, Comics Experience, and he is an obnoxious a-hole. I am not a fan, never have been a fan, have said it to Brian himself, to his face, not just through a keyboard, screen, but actually to the guy's face. But anyway, we go on. We could go on and, he posts to Heidi, also did an article here, sure. And then he gets to before you go much deeper, let's get the culture war stuff out of the way. Anyone, anywhere who wants to suggest the market's problems have to do with comics being too woke is a total screwball, full stop. And then he's like, it is definitely not true, and, blah, 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 blah. And he even brings the quote up, total screwball, fine. One thing I notice here, because he's like, it's absolutely anyone trying to push this agenda is a bad actor, doesn't understand how things works. Such people should be shunned and ignored. I want to pull this out real quick. These people should be shunned and ignored. And I just want to ask a question to this. When is that actually going to start happening? Because when you're writing an article and the top paragraph to your entire thesis is going into how it's not an issue, and when he gets into the second paragraph, you think he's done. No, I believe most of our current problems come down to the loss of institutional knowledge, short-term thinking on the publishing end, not what color and gender, sexuality, fictional character will be, culture war, culture war. Again, I, when does the shunning and ignoring happen? Because full stop. The most I hear about Comicsgate now is from the people who are against it, who won't shut up about it. Like literally, if it's bad and those people are dumb and everything is horrible and we should shun and ignore them, anytime you'd like to start, anytime, but feel free. You know, you don't need to go into it. It's not even a top 20 column problem with the industry. And then he will continue to go back to, there you go. There's number 4. They're not the culture war charges. Okay, at some point you get to the, if it's not, then move on. Seriously, we've got of the first kind of 4 paragraphs, 3 of them are going back into how the culture war isn't a problem. It's not a problem. Totally not a problem. Nothing to see here. Stop being. It's not. And at this point, I'll tell you, I don't think the culture war is the main problem, as many of you have attacked me for. I think distribution is a major problem. I think the fact that we're relying too much on institutional knowledge, which here, Brian, is where we completely disagree. And this is where we disagreed before. We disagreed a decade ago on this same exact topic. I think that just doing the things the way they've always been done over and over and over is the path to madness. Brian is basically saying, hey, actually, it's we need to go back and do things the way we were done before. So we have 2 very different philosophies playing out here. But if I'm not taking a stance of trying to ignore the culture war aspects completely, you'd be a fool not to, because if comics are meant to just put material out, entertain, and get dollars. That's the point. Retailers are supposed to have some confidence about what they're ordering and some confidence going to go out the door. The fact that comics has got itself embroiled in this culture war, and quite frankly, the fact that people won't shut up about it, it creates friction in this market, and that is negative. So I do believe that, look, the fact that people won't shut up about it, the fact that people keep harping about it, any business that finds itself having to talk about things that are unrelated to its business is struggling. That's not where you want to be. You do not want to have to spend your marketing dollars and your time and your effort trying to debunk culture war, and you find yourself there, you're kind of screwed and have to find your way out and saying, it's absolutely not the culture war charges, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. But literally, the part you set up here, such people should be shunned and ignored. Look, I don't. The shunned part just sounds like you're living in a comic book fantasy world, but the ignored part is a good idea. Look, if you don't believe this is the issue, then stop. Tell your friends in comics to stop posting these little tee-hee-hee blind items on social media around. Just to remind you, there's some hate group people out there. Just for a moment, do you notice that I have taken shots at Arby's consistently for, well, I mean, you guys have seen it for the last 5 years. I've been doing this for easily 30. And how many times has Arby's on their social media feed posted like, that Perch guy is an asshole? They haven't done that, and they're not going to do that because that would be insane for them to do that. When people are attacking you and talking about how crappy your food is, in the case of Arby's, it absolutely is true. You don't lean into that and put a lot of oxygen to it. You look at your own food and see if there's something you could do better. Otherwise, you play to the people who are liking your product. You don't go to war with some lunatic on Twitter. It's not what you do. But anyway, so we'll get past the culture war, which is definitely for sure absolutely not the problem. They're empathetically not the culture war charges. Okay, fine. They're acute with the problems with the value proposition, much of the issue with the direct market. So let's go into what he says, because the rest of his article turns into this contradictory word salad. But as Heidi is wont to say, a satisfying chunk. By the way, he does talk like this in real life. I want to be very clear. Almost every single person working at a comics publisher is someone who loves the medium very much. Okay, talking to a lot of people who work for the comic publisher, this is a nice little sentence to say. It is not true. Do you know how many people in comics are like, they hate their company, they don't want to answer email? Many of them have posted this out in public. So let's stop with that. I think, again, covering our head, our ears with our hands. throwing our head in the sand. See, I get to two sentences going to collide with each other. Doing that doesn't help. It doesn't help anything. Just screaming into the void. No, everybody loves comics. There are no problems here. What we really need is the same people who've been doing comics for the last 25 years to keep doing it the same way we've been doing it for the last 25 years. That that is extinction. Absolutely. I do not believe that anyone is deliberately setting out to make mediocre comics. Again, you might want to talk to some editors about that. I've heard that exact phrase from editors at Marvel. And it's not like we love making mediocre comics. It is, well, we've got to fill this hole basically in our schedule, and we don't think this comic is going to sell very well, but we'll put it out. Okay. He thinks that the incentives and corporate expectations of the two largest corporations are misaligned with what the audience actually wants. Agreed. Agreed. Totally true. I think the corporations see this as loss leader marketing. I think they're not willing to put real pay into the system, as I've talked about a billion times before. And I think what the audience wants is comics, as many places they can find them, at a low price point, in a serial, periodical form. He goes into some things here. Again, he makes a good point, and then he undermines his own point as it goes through. Again, not anything new from if you ever talk to the guy, but he goes into the corporate need to make a profit this quarter, more profit this quarter than it did last quarter. This invariably seems to lead to overexpansion of content. Okay, that's not how Disney and Warner Media are looking at this. Full stop. There is not this quarter better be better than last quarter. There is not. Okay, I can say from having talked to two guys who ran the show at both places, that is not how it's working. It is not this 1990s stereotype greed is good type thing. Last week's shipment had 6 different comics where Batman was the named lead character. This week has 5 different Spider-Man comics. Yes, this is a problem. It is not because the corporate overlords are pushing that. It is because that is what they know to sell, literally. And that's why we have variant comics and everything else, which he's talking about. But keep in mind, several of the big shop owners, Brian, to be fair to Brian, I don't remember him making this argument, but several of the other big shop owners were clamoring for this because they wanted that quick dollar. Sad to say. Anyway, we have to sell fewer, better comics to more people if we want to change the market trajectory. Sell fewer to more people? Sure. Okay. Better comics? That is subjective, but fine. He's saying he's hearing lots of retailers saying that Q1 is going to be very brutal and they will have to downsize, move to the comic shops in San Francisco. Stores I know that are well run by people who are passionate, are talking about how brutal the last 2 months have been. Okay, as holiday sales should be clicking into overdrive. The holiday sales at the comic shop is very mixed, by the way. A few shops have this has worked for, many have not. Anyway, he talks about his diversely stocked store as untethered from corporate IP as I could steer it for decades. Well, again, you have your shop in San Francisco. You have a clientele that's going to be more attuned to independent comics. It's good for you for reading your market correctly, but understand that is not the way the world works other places. By the way, there was a list of top-selling comics from Comic Hub, the software, and I couldn't help but notice that Brian Hibbs' store wasn't on that list as using that software. And that's fine. He doesn't have to use it. But as we're talking about reliable numbers, that's how the beat gets its numbers. So just pointing that out. Anyway, he's telling you sales are way off what they were in pre-pandemic 2019. Now, this is an interesting statement because lots of people were saying that, that 2020 and 2021 were some of the best. It's better than it's ever been. People are coming in like crazy. So this is a nice bit of honesty, but it definitely contradicts what was said before from Brian, by the way. Anyway, and then how are comics selling now? He's kind of lamenting the lack of public sales charts. This is something Heidi does as well as the biggest problem in comics. Again, one thing you could do is actually feed the comic sales charts by using that software that you don't use, but okay. But he says how many comics are selling over 100,000 once you take variant covers out of the factor. I have my doubts. Are any comics selling over 100,000? If you have doubts, you're a fool. They're not. They're flat not. I received a whole lot of radio silence when you asked publishers about current circulations. Yeah, you have to be friends with them. A lot of publishers don't like Brian. I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, how low is it really? Below 75, below 60, 50? Well, I don't know. I've been tracking this for 4 years. Brian himself came onto my channel, left a comment about how the numbers that I was posting was not helpful and was ignorant. So I don't know. Now he's curious. Okay, great. Um, we have 2,500 comic book stores. Again, this number is highly inflated based on what we're calling a comic book store. Fine. And he's doing some math here. It doesn't work out that way. 40 copies per venue. Again, that's you have a handful of whale shops that are selling lots of things. You don't have everybody selling 40. Many of these comic shops that are listed in this 2,500 don't sell new comics at all, quite frankly. But anyway, here's somebody saying we should wholeheartedly move to book format. Please remember that something like 2/3 of graphic novels do not even sell 1,000 copies annual per book stand, which includes all Amazon sales. This is nice. I appreciate Brian saying this. A lot of people within comics are talking about, well, it moved over to digital or moved over to graphic novels. Well, fortunately, BookScan is something you can search on. Search Amazon BookScan Calculator. It's a free site that any of you can use. You can throw any title in there, any link, and see exactly what it's selling. And those numbers suck. Anyway, how do we change this narrative doom? And his answer is success. We just need one thing. He's showing the New 52, House Vex, Powers Vex, Walking Dead as examples. He thinks we're one success away from a change in narrative. If his gravest fear, again, he talks like this in real life, even if success does get discovered, it will end up getting stifled by the corporate directives from above them. Disney and Discovery are both deeply in debt right now. It's hard to see them avoiding what worked before in SKU count, rapid title expansion. So I'll pause here for just a moment to point out that Discovery and Disney, Warner Media, are not counting on comics to save their bottom line. And it's not how they're running their business. It's, again, having talked to people at the very top of both Disney and Marvel, that is not how they're running their business. There's not a Disney, guy in a suit coming in here and going, we need 2% next quarter. That's not how it's working. Full stop. But so again, this idea that hey, if there is a success, then the corporations will come in and screw it up. I mean, it's on brand for Brian. I mean, he has a world philosophy. He's listed several times in this article about kind of corporations and greed and everything else. And okay, I get your perspective, but that doesn't mean it's reality. And then he goes into continuing to bitch about the minute DC left Diamond and they tried to upjump the two largest retailers into distributors, DC forced the entire market away of systems of rules and expectations that we collectively took decades to build. So they were aimed at being as fair as possible to all comers, into something that is absolutely resembling the Wild West where anything goes and all of the benefits turn away from the retailer. This is a hard lie. Okay, this idea that a bunch of people worked hard to prop up Diamond and it created rules and expectations that were fair to all comers is bullshit. And any smaller shop or person who was not, actively negotiating or harassing Diamond knows. You go into any publisher group, any retailer group of people who have big shops, small shops, everything else. The Diamond system was not universally fair to everyone. It absolutely was not. Some people got breaks. Some people got better shipping. Some people got there are tons of advantages to a select few. The irony, by the way, of this article and everything that's coming here is it's basically shaking its fist at the evils of capitalism and the corporation and all of this. And it kind of talking about this, collective system where everybody gets to have fairness. Except the problem is that's not how Diamond worked. A handful of elites did very well under Diamond. Many shops did not. So anyway, the timing of solicitation, centralized data discount, was upended with no central authority to enforce anything. Okay, so we don't like corporations, but we do like central authorities to enforce everything and basically gatekeep. What you're seeing, and this ultimately is the summation of this article, which continues, it continues to go in. I love this, by the way. People were very much against the notion of Diamond, viewing them as a monopoly. But DC's move made things worse for everyone because instead of having a single monopoly, we now have 3 monopolies. That's not what a monopoly is. Yes, there are no choice where we buy our comics. Again, no, you do have choice. You didn't have choice before with Diamond. You now have the big publishers who are going with very specific people, Lunar, Penguin, Random House. But how you negotiate that, how you spend your money, does give you more choice. We've near tripled the expense and back end of running a store. Not if you run it well. Sorry. No. Um, no consumer is making their purchases based on our business back end. I don't know. Other shops would disagree with that. But anyway, we have a firm regular Wednesday release schedule to worlds where stores put comics on sale whenever the heck they want. Yeah, it's a shame. Keep in mind, by the way, Brian was also one of the people who shouted at shops that were opening up in states where they were allowed to during COVID, and saying it was unfair because he couldn't. So I see stores releasing books today. They get them sometimes as much as a week ahead of the official release date. Yeah, that's called freedom of choice. I'm sorry, this is how the business goes. Data's gotten sloppier and sloppier. Again, Comics Pro is likely just weeks away from concluding its major work on Universal's data standards. Should, knock wood, start to minimize some of these issues. Okay, this is nice. Again, they listed all the shops that are on Comics Pro. His wasn't on here. Maybe it was a mistake. I don't know. These kinds of back-end shenanigans have to be addressed. So as you go in here, and thankfully he doesn't remind us that the culture war is not the issue again, as he sums up. We get bits of truth in between a lot of kind of filler, and the filler is designed to paint one specific picture, and it's basically this: just keep everything the way it is. We need to have the people who were in charge and in power 20 years ago still in power. We need to get back to institutions. We need to get back to the way it's always been. And that's going to save the industry. But the world is changing. 25 years ago, 40 years ago, look, a number of you on this channel talk about we just need to bring Jim Shooter back to run Marvel. That'll fix all problems. It won't. And nothing against Jim Shooter. He's an awesome guy. I think he did a lot of smart things. He was a tough guy. He was a right person for the right time. But when he was very successful, there was no internet, there was no digital, there was a massively different distribution problem. There was, the prices were different. There were a lot of things that were different. You can't just drop Jim Shooter in 2023 in and expect it to go like it did in the early 80s. And that's not a knock against him. That's just this acknowledgement that time changes and the markets change and things evolve. And comics has evolved. And so, this argument of we need to get back to institutions, the idea of changing and shaking up distribution, and the fact that DC went away from Diamond, it's a problem. Losing a certain critical mass of stores will cause the entire direct market side of things to fold like a house of cards. Yeah, it will. We are suffering a creative problem right now where the audiences aren't responding to much of what's being published. Yes. While at the same time, retailers are finding their workload and effort and costs are going up while sales are declining. That depends on the shop. Some shops, work has gone up. Other shops, no problem. It all kind of depends on whether that shop is adapting to the changes or not. If you're a shop that's basically just, shouting at the wind, hoping things go back to the way it was, I don't doubt it. Your world's probably gotten tougher. Anyway, the sad part of all this, to me, and it goes back to the meme at the top. There's a danger in looking at things and saying, we've been through this before. It's always been this way. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Because in addition to not taking some of the changes and the evolutions in the business seriously, it also kind of, Hibbs portrays himself or sees himself here as Dr. Manhattan, casually looking on as the overseer, the gatekeeper of how things work. And it's a painful point of view. It doesn't evolve things. It doesn't make things go forward. There's a lot of people right now in comics who are, wanting to shout at the culture war as the big issue, but simultaneously, and I talked about this other places, they also don't want to look at the future. They don't want to evolve things. They don't want to shift things. They don't have a place in this future. What you're seeing is the older, weaker animal slowly dying out. Comics are going to survive. They are going to thrive. They're going to thrive differently. It will be different. It will not be the way it's been. And anyone who's trying to get it to go back, and what's funny is a lot of the people will complain about, these fans just want it like it was back in the 80s or the 70s. Read Brian's article here. He's basically saying, "Look, we need to go back to the world where a handful of us collectively got together and created this diamond monopoly, and the world was better back then." Well, I'll say the same thing to Brian or several of these people that I often see on Twitter aimed at the fan. It's not going back to the way it was. It's just not. Thanks for listening.